Welcome back to Purrfect Takes. Today, we unfortunately have to talk about the embarrassment that happened in Buffalo. We thought we would get our lick back from the regular season game last year. Unfortunately, that did not happen as the Buffalo Bills destroyed us with their starters and backups from start to finish. What we can get into that. I think there's a couple like league news points we want to get into before we talk about the drubbing, but it was definitely not the outcome we wanted, especially after what seemed to be a promising start in the Hall of Fame
Yeah,
game.
you definitely don't want to see it, right? You want to build off of what you're able to do, but Haynes King wasn't there to save the day, unfortunately. And from the well, the Bills started with the ball. The first few snaps, you could tell it was going to be a different type of game. And the national point that I wanted to hit on before we get into this game was that Ozzy Trapillo, the Bears left tackle, apparently is coming back from a torn patellar tendon injury suffered in the playoffs. If that sounds familiar, it's because Ike Ekwonu had a similar injury, if not the same type of injury, one day before Trapillo had his injury on Wild Card Weekend. And Trapillo is back apparently already. I don't know if he'll play Week 1 against Carolina, but that's a huge recovery. Whereas with Ekwonu, I don't know if he's going to play at all this year. Somebody asked Dave Canales about it yesterday. Canales said I wouldn't rule him out for Week 1, but that sounds like coach speak to me. Ike Ekwonu hasn't practiced outside of just jogging on the side in individuals yet in training camp, and we're what 3 weeks away, 4 weeks away now from the season. So I doubt that he'd be back, but it's an interesting turnaround. And people heal differently, right? Trapello and Ekwonu are different people, but it's crazy that an injury of that severity, and he could already be back Week 1 to face the Panthers.
It is a little crazy. The biggest thing that I'll point out, Ozzy Trapillo is a little bit taller of a player. Ike Ekwonu is a little bit heavier. So again, different body types. Like you talked about, not everybody heals the same. It's frustrating to see, yes, a player that suffered the same injury come back a little bit faster. But I think it's surprising how fast Trapillo's coming back off this injury. I think that's more of a testament to their training staff, his recovery, than it is indictment of Ike Ekwonu here. So I don't want to speed up Ike Ekwonu here. We have Rasheed Walker, we have Monroe Freeling. I think the biggest thing is just making sure that when Ike Ekwonu and Taylor Moton kind of get activated to the main roster, that they are good and healthy and ready to go when they're needed. So I think heading into the game, the biggest thing that we probably need to talk about, and this was something that we were going back and forth about details and specifics, is just Chandler Zavala and the interior offensive line. We talk about Ike Ekwonu, but the guys that were missing, especially when we had the ones out there, were Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis. And we had three new interior offensive linemen to start this, Zavala being the left guard, Luke Fortner playing center. And they both had mistakes, and they both were apparent within the first three drives where we had the starters out there. What are your main concerns? And are they something that we can overcome with coaching? Or is this something that we need our starters back? And I would lean towards the latter, but I want to give you kind of the floor
We're
here.
gonna need our starters back. I'm writing like a breakdown article about this game over on sportsclt.com. Go check it out. But one of the main point I want to highlight is the guard depth here, right? And to say that it's or you'd have to acknowledge that Rob Hunt and Damian Lewis weren't playing in this one because it was evident from the start. Zavala, you and I talked about it. To quote your term, horrendous first two plays by Zavala, getting blown up in the run game and then allowing a pressure onto Bryce Young. And that kind of set the tone. I thought Rasheed Walker and Monroe Freeling at the two tackle positions played fine. Freeling, I was actually impressed with, considering he had to deal with a guy like Greg Rousseau for most of those snaps, and he held his own, especially in the pass game. The run game, we can work on that a little bit, but that was kind of his profile coming out of the draft. The interior, however, Luke Fortner, it might be a symptom just of playing between two backup guards with Brady Christensen and Zavala that he didn't play at his best. You know, you're only as good as the guy next to you. That was the thing with Taylor Moton for years when he had bums, to put it lightly, playing next to him at right guard. But the entire interior just collapsed almost every single play. The one play where they really didn't was Jonathan Brooks's scamper up the middle I think it was for 6 yards. He finished the day with 5 yards total because he got blown up on a couple runs. It was really really bad. And Zavala, who we kind of praised in the Hall of Fame game for going up against like fourth stringers and looking all right, just doesn't look like an NFL caliber player to this point. And I think the most concerning part about this is, well, two things. One, Rob Hunt and Damian Lewis aren't exactly symbols of health over the past couple of years. Rob Hunt missed most of last year. I think it was a torn bicep or torn tricep he suffered in the Arizona game. Damian Lewis has missed chunks every year, and especially during training camp, he always misses time. So they aren't exactly the healthiest. And the second part of this is the Panthers haven't really developed any true backup interior guys. I would say other than Brady Christensen, but I consider him more of a swing tackle. He plays every offensive line position. They haven't developed anybody over the past few years. Zavala is their shining guy. He's the last guard they drafted, if I'm not mistaken, and that was back in the Bryce Young draft. Since then, no interior lineman other than Sam Hecht, who they brought in this year. The guard depth on this team, I don't think it can be addressed by coaching. I think if you don't feel good about it, you need to trade for somebody or sign like Mekhi Becton, like one of those level of free agents that's still out there because it's apparent. And if Rob Hunt and Damian Lewis aren't ready for our week one, oh, the Bills front is a bit stronger than the Bears front, I'll say. But by the time you get to week two, the Falcons had a good interior D line last year. They had a lot of guys that had a lot of sacks, even though they traded away their top interior sack getter for some reason to Jacksonville in like a weird swap. That one was odd. And then Cleveland, Mason Smith, young guy. And then you keep going. Mason Grant,
Mason
Mason Smith
Graham. What
is
are we
the guy
talking
that the
about?
Falcons traded for. Mason with
Yeah,
two
that's
A's.
your,
Yeah,
your
I'm
Mason
mixing up the
mix up.
Masons. But as the year progresses, the interior defensive lines that you're going to face are going to be more and more difficult. So you need your top guards to stay healthy, and you really need some of the depth guys like Jake Curhan or Nick Samak to step up and take one of those backup guard roles because the team waived Sadiq Charles last week, and Zavala, I think through this is year 4 for him now. Through 3 years when he's actually on the field against starters in real games, still hasn't shown that he's a plus player.
I think that's correct. Damian Lewis has been a
I
staple the
mean,
past
in
4 years.
training
He's
camps, he's
played or
missed
started 16
time.
games. No, absolutely. Yeah. No, I'm just letting the audience know that when it's come to the regular season, he's only missed the game the past 4 years. He's started and played in 16 games the past 4 years. It's Rob Hunt that has the issues, and you're just wondering if that's going to become a reoccurring issue or if it's going to be like a Joe Burrow, Dak Prescott situation where it's 1 year he's healthy, the next year he's not. And you just kind of go back and forth. And this is the year he'll be healthy for the duration of the season. You just need those guys back because clearly that was an issue. Luke Fortner, I didn't have as much of an issue with him in either pass protection or run blocking. Obviously, it weren't like stellar performances in those arenas. It was the obviously man downfield where we pick up what would have been our lone first down with the starters on that third drive.
It
And
was,
actually, no,
yeah.
yeah, third drive with the ineligible man downfield, and it was just a well executed play. He needs to be on the same page as everybody else on that offense in order for it to function and kind of keep everything ahead of the chains. You brought up Zavala. The two horrendous plays to start. Deion Walker, big boy, gets put on him first down, blows it up, stops Jonathan Brooks. Then we drop back the pass on 2nd and 10. Ed Oliver pushes him pretty much right in the Bryce Young, and he was treading water the rest of the game. I don't think it was as horrendous as a lot of Panthers fans want to make it out to be, but he is a backup for a reason. He has not proven that he should be a starter or be competing for a starter spot. So it is worrisome if he's a guy that's going to be asked to step in and play meaningful snaps again this fall. If we want to talk about some interesting wrinkles, I want to touch on this point. On the second drive, we had a 2nd and 1. Jonathan Brooks, I think, had a great run on 1st down and 10, sets us up very nicely. And instead, we go back to the. Actually, no, I think we passed out of that one, got it the 2nd and 1. Then we hand it off to Jonathan Brooks. He gets stuffed for a yard. We're at 3rd and 2. And this is where there were a couple different plays that happened sequentially on all 3 drives. The first drive, Rasheed Walker, he's blocking the edge rusher and he kind of comes and kind of blows up the middle of the pocket not allowing Bryce to step it up into the throw, and he's looking to the left side of the field. He's glued to that side, but if you look at the camera angle and you go back and you see the end zone view of that third down play, JT Sanders is running wide open down the middle of the field. And that's where he's got to be able to turn and locate that, because you'll watch these training camp highlight videos of Bryce Young and he's finding those throws, and he's got to do it a little bit more consistently at this level, because again, on that second drive, after you have that 2nd and 1, you run it to Jonathan Brooks, you have a 3rd and 2, he goes shallow the Tommy Tremble and it gets broken up. But if you look at all the defenders, they're bracketing these shallow routes. And just behind that, if he had just hesitated, if he pump fakes, because the nickel blitz off the side hadn't even reached Brooks. Brooks was set up to block him. That blitzer hadn't even gotten to the backfield. If he had just pump fake there, gotten the linebacker and the other defensive back to kind of bite on that, Jalen Coker was one-on-one with the safety, and he would have had an edge there again with that seam route. So two kind of shots that he misses there. And then on that final drive before the starters got pulled, Bryce Young kind of looking around frantically. You have Jalen Coker on a drag route, and the player that was initially covering T-Mac comes off T-Mac. They bracket that drag route. And this is where, if Bryce Young had seen it fast enough, he's got to rip the slant to T-Mac before that safety can kind of make a play on it, and you're able to pick up the chains. But again, these are things that he's got to figure out timing wise. He's got to be willing to hang in there and make some of those intermediate and deep throws in order to keep this offense on track. Because if he's not, we're going to have a lot of these 3-and-outs, and we're going to start the season slow again. And we can't have that, especially with how much is riding on the season. So I don't know how much you want to touch on that, but it was just, it felt like a recurring pattern where the defense was cluing in on a lot of the checkdowns, a lot of these like short routes that are supposed to help alleviate Bryce. And Bryce simply needs to either pump fake, or he's got to move on and find where the hole is, because they're taking extra defenders from the intermediate and deeper parts of the field to take away what Bryce Young feels comfortable
I
with.
would hope that it's more of it's a preseason thing and they're not trying to do a ton of complex stuff. What I will say is on the first drive, right, or excuse me, the second drive, the one where he got batted. I think Brooks can go up there and engage Bernard quicker, but that's neither here nor there. The one you talked about where Rasheed Walker kind of muddied the pocket, it was hard to step up, I think, into that. So he just kind of has to get outside and make something happen at that point.
Yep.
Yeah, and
And,
the
and I'm
third
not I'm
down,
not
I
blaming Bryce
agree
there.
with
It's
you.
more just if he's
The
able to work
people
it.
are talking about he should have hit Jalen Coker. Jalen Coker's ribs get destroyed if he hits Coker there, but he does have to recognize T Mac and rip that one quick, like you said, on the third series. Ultimately, uh, I'm fine with the starters not being in any longer than that because they weren't getting it done against the starters. So why keep them in there to make them feel good when the Bills put the backups in? I don't necessarily agree with that. So I'm fine with all that. I thought, like I said, I thought the tackles played well. For the things that were good, I think our starting defense, not the DBs, I want to get there in a minute, but the pressure that we were able to get up front with Jalen Phillips and Princely, who answered the call. He got called out, like having to play in the Hall of Fame game, and he stepped up. He had some good pressure on Josh Allen. He led or he helped contribute to a sack for Jalen Phillips. Phillips, I would say they probably should call that a sack on the third down where they allowed Josh Allen to stay out there for longer because uh, Allen like face masked him at that point. If you allow that, then you can't be allowing defensive face masks. But I digress to that point.
I think because both of the players were still moving and it was operating as
Yeah,
like a
well,
stiff
if
arm, they were going to
if
give it a couple
Phillips
more
like
seconds.
puts his full body weight into him and sacks him, then it's a penalty, right? So that's just a me thing. It's hard for defenders to have the benefit of the doubt on stuff like that. But they did their job in the red zone. The Bills had a sure touchdown, and the sack and then the pressure made them go to a field goal on that first drive. So, and even the backup edge rushers like Travis Gibson, Thomas Incoom, Cam Gill, they all had really good days. So I'm pretty pleased with the pressure from the edge, especially considering they were horrendous in the Hall of Fame game. What I'm not pleased with on defense, and this is another thing that goes back to things fans have been talking about forever. Yes, it's the preseason. Yes, your scheme. You're not going to be sending fire blitzes and stunts on every play. But can I get one 4th and 3 or 4th and short where the corners aren't playing 10 yards off the ball? Like, I mean, come on. The excuse the entire time Drew Rivera's been here is he doesn't have the guys up front to do that, so they have to play back. Well, you do now. And Jalen Phillips already showed what he can do in the, I think he had 9 snaps and he had 2 pressures and a sack. He showed how good he can be. Devin Lloyd was everywhere. On the first series where he split the gap, I think is the C gap, with a guard pulling and the tight end to go bring down James Cook for like a 1 yard loss. I was getting Luke Kuechly flashbacks. So like he was playing well, Phillips was playing well, but our corners, not only did they get shredded in the pass game, they're just playing super far off. It just comes down to the scheme too. Like I get that maybe you don't want to reveal some of your cloud coverages and stuff, but it's 4th and 3. Like put the corners on the line and like stab the receivers so they can't run 3 yard digs and get a first down. It's funnily enough, the Panthers won on a game like that last year when we played the Cowboys. They played their guys 6 yards off and it was a 4th and 4, and Bryce Young hits Hunter Renfro. Easy conversion. We go down and win the game. How are we still doing this 4 years into Ejiro Evero's tenure, excuse me, when we have all the pieces now? We got it. Like, I'm like talking to myself, it's got to just be preseason, right? This can't carry over into the regular season because if it does, then when games actually matter, we're going to start losing games again because of this defense.
The biggest thing I'll say, Derek
He didn't
Brown
play at
really
all
didn't
in
play
this one.
much. It was yeah. I was
Mhm.
I didn't want to say for sure. I was like most reps I saw was Cam Jackson, Bobby Brown, and they both showed good plays. Some not so great. You hope that you get a little bit more of a push on the interior. Jalen Phillips obviously showed flashes. Prince Uman was definitely getting home and wrecking a little bit of havoc, and like you said, answered the call a little bit. So it was good to see the free agent additions in Phillips and Lloyd step up and show why we paid them the big money. Again, I think Ejiro Evero, and this is just comments about the coaching staff. I brought up the 2nd and 1, which, like, from an analytics perspective, that is the ultimate. Like, you
That's
need
the
to
house
take a
money
shot.
down.
Like that is it. Yeah, and that's where it's just you gotta take it. Obviously, it's the preseason, and maybe like, hey, we're just gonna hide whatever that whole shot or whatever that big shot is that we're gonna call. And you don't want to show that in preseason. But then Ejiro Evero playing very, very like lax coverage, this bend don't break philosophy. It's like that's how you lose games. Brian Flores against the Giants was
Hmm.
dialing it up. I mean, you should have
They were
seen the
killing
hell he was
Jackson
putting the
Dart.
Giants offense in. And he'll do it all day, every day, because that's Brian Flores' philosophy. And it's going to get to a point where Zero Evero, his time's up. And he got good graces because he earned Dave Canales' respect in that final game when it went 10-9 and the Bucks beat us here in Charlotte. But it's very frustrating to see that it's the same old patterns over and over again. And it goes to even like the end of the game where Dave Canales was getting questioned, like, hey, why weren't the starters out there longer? And I agree with you. They probably didn't need to be out there any longer. Like, these guys are practicing throughout the entire week. They'll have another game or two to kind of get some more reps before week 1. But his whole, like, I'm a good guy bravado. I keep kind of everybody's spirits up. Like, that's only going to go so far. Like, you're going to have to win along these margins in terms of just these analytical moments or just like you said, you have the horses with J.C. Horn and Mike Jackson. Like, make them earn it. Like, sometimes if you get burned that way, it's like it's okay. It's a play. You can get back in it. But if you're going to play lax and you give them an opportunity to win because you're trying not to lose, that is how you lose. So it's just these things like we're making notes and tabs of. It is preseason, but this could trickle in and again affect a slow start, which is what we're trying
It's
to avoid.
preseason, but we've seen this in every previous season, right? Like this isn't new. And what I will say about pulling the defensive starters, it was weird that they pulled them mid-series. To I guess they got the notice from the league. It's like, hey, let Josh Allen
Jeremiah Love.
score a touchdown in his new stadium,
Oh, that one, yeah.
which is because we held them the first drive. They almost scored a field goal. Which I don't know. That one's weird. I would have kept the starting corners in because they were barbecue chicken throughout the first 2 drives. But if they had a play limit like a set range before they had to get them out, I'm cool with that. It's preseason week 1. Like you said, we're gonna have a tough joint practice slash game with Jacksonville this week before coming back and hosting Houston for that. So that's not a huge nitpick. The only other thing that I would say about things I was disappointed in, Trevor Etienne mixed in with the ones. He got a lot of run with the twos. I'm still not seeing a lot there from him in the run game. I don't remember if he returned any kicks. We returned a lot of kicks in this one because they were scoring quite a bit. Still, like if he did return kicks, I don't remember it because he didn't make a splash there. If he did, and AJ Dillon when he was out there just looked so much better. There's a wheel. It wasn't necessarily a wheel route. I know Steve Smith called it that on the or a check down. Excuse me. It was more of a wheel route out to the left when Kenny Pickett was in. It was like a 14-ish yard catch, and AJ Dillon hauls it in and keeps running down the sideline. If he can catch passes out of the backfield, what's the utility in keeping ETN here when at least I think Jimmy Horn, Jassim Reed, and John Mechie can all return better than him, and AJ Dillon can catch. He can obviously he can block because he has the frame, and he can be the short yardage back. So we need to see more out of ETN over ECHN, excuse me, over the next
No,
ETN.
he's ETN until he earns it. Like this is, I think I saw someone on Twitter going, I think we can call Travis
Trevor.
Achan, but Trevor is ETN until
Well,
he earns the
hopefully he
stripes.
does because joint practices matter a lot. At least to this Panthers regime, they matter a lot more to the coaches. Like that's when they really see the stuff. And Jacksonville and Houston are no slouches. Houston in particular, you're really gonna have to have a good week against them. But Jacksonville is the one coming up. I think they have their first joint practice tomorrow, Wednesday, because the game is on Friday. So hopefully he steps up. Some of those fringe players step up. The only other positive I wanted to point out, Jassim Reed, another touchdown, and I think it was John Mechie scored the touchdown in the waning seconds too. So both
Yeah.
of the guys battling for the end of the roster. They're both out there scoring. So I like to see the competition on the back end of the roster because it means we're only pushing the depth of that position.
It is. See the wide receiver room now compared to what it was Bryce Young's rookie year. It's night and day, and that's great to see. You feel really happy about that. It's really just the investment in the offensive line and getting those guys back healthy because, like, technically we're on our backup
That's
tackles in
true.
Rasheed Walker and Monroe Freeling. Like, if they're able to play until the starting tackles get back in, and then we have the guards and Luke Fortner's there, and Sam Hecht is still kind of growing and developing, this is a group that should be able to hold its own, especially through those first couple of weeks. Because again, there's nothing about the Falcons' defensive line
Well,
that scares me. There's
especially
nothing
the
about the
Falcons
Bears'
now
defensive line
without
that
their two
scares me.
top rushers, who they did just sign Zadarius Smith, but you know he's uh he's a bit of a senior citizen as far as the NFL is concerned.
It's like talking about
Yeah,
Von
that's
Miller
true.
signing with the Dallas Cowboys. At some point, some of these guys are just names, and they obviously did stuff in their career, and they may have a player or two throughout this season. But in terms of like them making a meaningful impact, this is something where you have the first couple weeks where it should be a pretty easy transition as long as everybody stays on the same page,
Mm.
communicates, and does their job. And so that helps you evaluate what you have in Bryce Young, what you have with this wide receiving core, what you have with this play caller and Brad Idzik. Like, does he have the chops? Like we saw in the Hall of Fame game, we didn't see it a ton this past game. And I thought there were opportunities there, and hopefully we're able to capitalize on those opportunities. But again, a lot remains to be seen. And again, we're about halfway through kind of the preseason at this point because we get 4 games, everybody else gets 3. Excited to see kind of the joint practice, the stuff that comes from it with Jacksonville. Liam Cohen is a very good coach. He has his guys prepared. They went 13-4 last year. This is somebody that's going to sharpen you as you get ready for the regular season. And the same goes with the following week with the Houston Texans. D'Amico Ryans and their unit is they aren't slouches. They are going to give our offense work, and that's going to get Bryce Young prepared for day one. Anything you really want to touch on, Panthers related, NFL news related? I think we've talked about the coaches, the players, a lot of the things that I think really stuck out to us from the preseason game and then what we want to see moving forward.
Yeah, kind of a national and Panther related thing. The Panthers signed Darren Waller this past week, and obviously he didn't play in the game. They officially signed him on Monday, yesterday, as we're recording on a Tuesday. Um, I, if he has anything left in the tank, that'd be pretty cool because to this point, JT Sanders hasn't given us a ton, and so if you're able to get even last year in the limited snaps that Waller did play, I thought he moved off the line pretty well. Like he still had that speed there. He's obviously a big guy, and even if you can get 5 good routes out of him a game where he's not necessarily catching the ball, but he's going down the seam, down the middle, which is something this team hasn't had since Greg Olson, to be quite frank, in terms of middle pushers from the tight end spot. If you can get 5 routes of that a game and maybe 2 catches on that, that's a huge upgrade to this offense because it'll move a linebacker back. It'll pull a safety closer to that spot. So I want to see one if he gets on the field at all. I wouldn't expect it in Jacksonville, but maybe against Houston if he gets on the field. And two, during the joint practices, if he's able to get out there and show some stuff because the tight end position has long plagued this team. If you look at the depth chart, they're unofficial depth charts, but even now, Tommy Trimble and Mitchell Evans are tight ends 1 and 2, which really shows how far down the totem pole Jonathan or JT Sanders has slid over the past couple of years. So getting anything from the tight end spot, I think, would be a huge upgrade for this offense. That's one thing I'm looking forward to the next 2 weeks. What about you?
To kind of go off that, because that was one of the bigger signings, where we talked about, hey, we didn't like what we saw from the edge room. We wanted to see them go out and make a change. That does signal that JT Sanders is not that guy. Darren Waller is going to be more that receiving threat. I think they are happy with the blocking efforts they get from Tommy Tremble and Mitchell Evans, and maybe some of the receiving abilities they do have if they're in like a 12 personnel package. But for me, Darren Waller just screams like they want to be able to have like a big body tight end that they can throw the ball and feel comfortable as a receiving threat. They thought they had that in JT Sanders. Obviously, what they've seen the past couple of years has led them to believe that they don't have that in JT Sanders. So I think that was a good call out. We brought up Trevor Etienne here, guys that have been drafted over the past few years that are just not panning out.
Yeah,
Claudin
that's
Cherlis
the other
was
big point.
running a lot with Devin Lloyd. He had the tackle for loss on a little swing. That was funny. It was like a lot of these like pitch run plays that the Bills had. It was like we had that swallowed up. Devin Lloyd had the second tackle for loss on like a similar play. But it was nice to see them shooting gaps, attacking the ball. But again, Trevor Wallace not running with the ones. It just leads you to believe that a lot of these guys that you've invested in are not panning out, which again is not necessarily an indictment on the coaching staff, but is indictment on the front
For
office.
sure. Like that's another point too. Like with the guard depth and stuff like that, and a lot of people are coming at Dave Canales on social media. He's not the guy who's drafting him, right? Like it's ultimately up to Dan Morgan and his staff to field the complete team. So hopefully some of these guys like Jake Curhan or Nick Samak can step up in that guard position. I'm glad you brought up the linebackers. That was probably the only other point I wanted to make. Chairless did have that nice play, but throughout the game, I don't think either of them stood out. Chairless and Trevin Wallace over the other. So I think that competition is going to continue probably till the end of training camp, and I would expect whoever they're both going to make the team, right? But I would expect whoever loses that to be the primary backup, and then I don't know who the fourth backer is going to be. I would like for Jackson Kuwatch to make the team. I thought he in the second half was out there making plays. He was all over the field. I think he had 2 tackles, 2 stops or run stops, like behind the line at the line of scrimmage. Excuse me. And if he just gets a little bit stronger, I think he could be a good core 4 teamer and a backup linebacker. So we'll have to see the whole linebacking battle. I think we're into takes territory, unless you have anything else. And my take, it's related to one of the players that we talked about earlier. Oh, as I unhighlight it from the sheet here, you might have seen me type this as we're talking, but I think AJ Dillon's going to make the 53. I know he was kind of an afterthought back when free agency first started because you need camp bodies and stuff like that. But if Chuba Hubbard's injury lingers into the regular season, they expect him to be back. But even if he is back, I think he's just done everything better than Trevor Etienne to this point. And even though they still have Etienne as the primary returner on the depth chart, I just what have we seen out of that? Maybe that in practice he's like a superstar returner because in games it just hasn't translated. Rico Dowdle and Chuba were the primary returners last year, and then Xavier Leggett at the end of the year. And then we've harped on this for us like every other episode that we've recorded. He just isn't a good punt returner. So I'd like to see what Jimmy Horn can do returning punts. Mechie, Jassim Reed, guys who are fighting for roster spots, they can probably return kicks. Like we're talking about, if AJ Dillon can catch passes out of the backfield, there's nothing better on offense that Etienne's able to do, except probably knowing the playbook to this point since he's been on the team longer. So that's going to be my take. AJ Dillon's going to make the 53. I don't know if it'll be at the expense of Etienne, but I think he is just a better option for the team going forward, a team that has actual expectations this year.
If you're going to ask me what's more valuable, I think we carry six wide receivers for
Hmm.
sure, regardless of what happens. But like a seventh wide receiver or ETN, I'm probably leaning wide receiver seven because at that rate, it's one of the three young wide receivers we've talked about, or a guy like David Moore. And I'm sorry, I think David Moore adds more to the team, more to the wide receiver room than a guy like Trevor ETN does to the running back room. So stashing him away as a practice squad guy, allowing him to still earn reps, develop as a year two guy is completely fine. But I see him as a potential cut candidate and not a guy that makes the 53. I like this take. It looked like he was kind of moving himself up after the Cardinals game as kind of the RB3. And I think the showing he had against Buffalo is really putting himself in the contention for that spot and being locked into the 53 man roster. My take last week, I said Jimmy Horn would catch a touchdown. The other two young wide receivers, John Mechie and Jasim Reed, they got theirs. Jimmy Horn didn't get his. I will not be doubling down with that take. I do hope he gets in the end zone one of these next two preseason games. But my take is it's going off another young rising star, a year two player that I thought took a step, especially against the Buffalo Bills, and they have some pretty good tackles. They aren't bums, so to speak. And so I think Prince Uman gets his first sack of the preseason against Trevor Lawrence or the backup quarterback for the Jags, depending on how many reps both the starters play and he plays. But I think he gets home, and that's something that I want to hopefully see him develop because him alongside uh, Jalen Phillips on like a third down, that's what you want to see. And if you can have Patrick Jones kind of come in for the early downs, be a guy that can set the edge, be impactful in the run game, that's the kind of rotation you want to see from a young developing defensive line. It gives you hope that when Nick Scorton gets back next year, that you guys are ready to hit the ground running as a unit. So yeah, I think Prince Uman gets home, gets a sack against
It should be
Jacksonville.
noted that Pat Jones didn't play in this Buffalo game, and so Prensley was asked to step up as a starter, and still against guys like Deion Dawkins and Spencer Brown was able to get some pressure out there on Josh Allen. So a really good showing by him. I like this one a lot. I don't know if they counted that as a half sack on the first Allen sack between Phillips and Prensley. I think Phillips got
I,
yeah,
I think they just
which
gave it to
it
Phillips,
was a
which is
scrum.
kind of
It could have
crazy.
been. It's kind of like the Miles Garrett where it was a half sack, then they went back and I remember watching Red Zone that day. It's like, wait, we're this just in. They're actually giving Miles Garrett the credit on this one. Wow, so he's up to 21 sacks. It kind of felt like that, but I like this a lot. He has the tools to get there. He has the speed, the power. Just needs to put it all together and be more consistent. But yeah, hopefully some of these young guys take a step. I know we've been harping on a lot of the young guys. It's funny you're bringing up the young receivers, Jasim Reed, Jimmy Horn, and John Mechie. I was just thinking about the Vikings. They have all the J receivers, so maybe we could have our own little version of that in wide receivers 4 through 6 or something. That's just a funny thought to go with there. But I think that's gonna
Minnesota lesser here in
yeah,
Charlotte. I
hopefully
like it.
we win as many games as they do this year or more this year. That's such a tough division. We'll have to talk about the NFC North at some point with the Bears. Will we play them this year? So maybe we can talk about it then. That's probably the most competitive division in my opinion. But I think until we get back next week, we'll have gone or we will have seen the joint practices and the preseason game. Hopefully it goes better. But until then, you can find us on our socials, Twitter, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your content. And until next week, keep pounding.